So, what is absolute pitch? I'm sure many of you know. By definition, absolute pitch is the ability to identify a pitch without a reference tone. Its prevalence, the most popular number being thrown around is 1 in 10,000. Some researchers disagree, Ryerson, say it's a little bit more common than 1 in 10,000. But by and large, everyone is still citing 1 in 10,000. Demographically, absolute pitch possessors tend to be of East Asian descent, began musical training between the critical age of 3 and 5 years old, and speak some form of tone language, usually all dialects of Chinese, Vietnamese, etc. So that's absolute pitch. Now, on to the next topic, synesthesia. What is synesthesia? Very basically, it's when you have one sensory modality in, and you experience two sensory modalities in your brain. So the first one is what we call the expected modality, and the second one is the unexpected modality. Unexpected for the general population, not unexpected to those people who have been born with it their entire lives. By and large, as Constantina mentioned previously, synesthesia is prevalent in approximately 4% of the general population. So that's 4% has some kind of synesthesia in the population. So today, I'm going to be talking specifically about tone color synesthesia. So they're going to hear the sound, that's the expected modality, and the unexpected modalities, they will see color. So that's tone color synesthesia. Its prevalence is about 8.7% of all synesthetes, and so that translates to approximately 0.35% of the general population. So, why am I introducing them separately? $1,000,000 question. Why do we care? Why do we care about absolute pitch and tone color synesthesia, which seems like two very completely different conditions? That's why we're here today. So the relationship. They both occur at a precognitive level. That is to say, people who have synesthesia or absolute pitch have absolutely no control over their responses. So these have been done with street tests by various people, and it's been shown that it occurs at an involuntary level. There are also similarities in cognitive responses to stimuli. So although the underlying neurobiological structures are not the same, the responses are very similar between synesthetes and absolute pitch possessors. So we can sort of try to connect these two with a theory called the hyperconnectivity theory. In a seminal paper in 2001 by Ramachandran and Hubbard, they proposed that the cause of synesthesia comes about from a deficiency in pruning at a younger age that leaves a lot of connections between different parts of the brain, well, connected when they should have been pruned. So in the case of tone color synesthesia, people have their tone processing centers still connected to their color labeling centers. And so I and several of these researchers here think that we can extend this theory to include absolute pitch as well. It is possible that the tone the tone processing centers are still connected to the labeling centers of the brain. So using neuroimaging studies and several behavioral studies, these researchers here have all done some sort of research looking at this relationship between absolute pitch and synesthesia and hyperconnectivity. So our first research question that we set out to answer in our study, will individuals with absolute pitch concurrently possess tone color synesthesia at a higher rate than the general population, given the similarities that we found in response and neurobiological response? So in order to figure that out, we conducted an epidemiological study to look at the occurrence of absolute pitch and tone color synesthesia using an online survey and test. Our second research question. Do tone color synesthetes show enhanced pitch perception and memory abilities due to their dual sensory modalities? So we took a look at that using a behavioral study, which I'll go into a little more detail later on. So in terms of our study, how is it different from all of the other studies? Well, this is one of the first studies that we have launched that have been launched on a large scale, looking at the number of absolute pitch possessors and how whether or not they possess tone color synesthesia as well. And no one has looked at the baseline abilities of synesthetes, tone color synesthetes, compared to the normal population. And so that was our motivation for setting up on this study. So, without further ado, our epidemiological study. So, recruitment-wise, we went far and wide, all over the internet, by and large. And we set the following tasks to them. We asked them questions about their musical background, their family, and any absolute pitch or synesthetic tendencies that they may or may not have. We administered an absolute pitch test, and then we administered a tone color synesthesia test. So here's a quick look at what the absolute pitch test looks like. It was modeled on Bermuda's and Zatori's 2007C paper, and we used their stimuli. We had to make a couple of modifications, obviously, because we weren't in a controlled lab environment. And so this is what the AP test looked like. The synesthesia test was modeled on the Eagleman battery, and this is what it looks like. So, results. We had 575 people complete our test, out of which 89 people had absolute pitch. Of the 89 people, we had 6 of them who definitely had tone color synesthesia, per the requirements and guidelines set out by Eagleman. The remaining 12, you'll notice it says possible, because they're in that sort of gray area where they would have to come in and strip test them in order to confirm that they had synesthesia. But for the purposes of my talk today, I'm just going to say that we have 6 definite synesthetes. So for our results, just a quick reminder, 8.7% of all synesthetes have tone color synesthesia. So 0.35 of the general population. So we have an astounding 6.74% who definitely have tone color synesthesia. And this number can go all the way up to 20.22% if all of the people that we Stroop test positive for tone color synesthesia. Just to give you a quick idea, we ran a chi-square test, and the results are very significant here. So we set out to find out if individuals with AP concurrently possess tone color synesthesia at a higher rate than the general population. And for right now, it seems so. So, yay. So changing gears really quickly, I'm going to talk about the behavioral study before I return to the discussion and conclusion. So for the behavioral test, just a quick reminder again what we set out to explore at the behavioral test. Is tone color synesthesia associated with improved pitch processing abilities at the level of basic perception and memory? In order to do this, we set out to do case study comparisons because of the rarity of tone color synesthesia and finding people to get them to physically come in and test them. And we did matched controls based on gender, musical training, and age. So for recruitment, again, we went on databases and we pulled from our online test as well. Methodology, I had to make sure that they completed the online test beforehand, so I knew their age and their musical background and their gender. We administered a hearing test before the tasks to ensure that they didn't have deficits in their hearing. And we balanced the tasks, the perception and the memory task, to ensure that there were no fatigue effects. So for the perception task, we ran it using a basic psychoacoustic paradigm. It's basically a 3 alternative false choice task, where one of the tones is higher than the other, and they just basically had to pick. And it's an adaptive task, and what we were looking for here is we derived a pitch discrimination threshold. And so that was it for the perception task. Very easy, a little bit tedious, but such is the nature of the task. Now for the memory task, we did a same different adaptive task as well. This memory task has previously been published and used in an amusia study by Williamson and Stewart. And we would derive a tone memory span score from this test. So just to give you a quick example, you will hear the initial, and then you'll hear the test sequence, and then you'll just say same or different. And as you enter your response, you'll get a little burst of static. To cleanse the auditory palate. And so this would just go on and on until we find your threshold. So our results. Our first synesthete was a musician. If you look at the gold MSI score, this is the musical training score. It goes between 7 and 49, so these are trained musicians. You'll see that we balance very well because I have non-significant result differences here. Unfortunately, at this point in time, we have non-significant results for both the perception threshold and the memory span. Our second synesthete was a non-musician, but you'll notice once again that we have non-significant results. So perhaps we'll have better luck as we have more data, but for right now, check back in. I don't know yet. So what have we found out from these two studies? Well, from the epidemiological study, we can say that there's a high rate of absolute pitch possessors with tone color synesthesia. This forms a strong basis for future research, and it provides good evidence for the hyperconnectivity theory and the absolute pitch and tone color synesthesia coexistence theory. In terms of our behavioral test, reasons that our results were possibly not significant, possibly due to our sample size. We've only tested 2 synesthetes thus far, so perhaps the results will change as we test more synesthetes. More sessions might be needed. Traditionally, psychoacoustic studies require many sessions over many days. We only had our people come in for 1 session, so it's possible that results would become significant if we followed strict psychoacoustic methodology. It could be that our tests are not sensitive enough to detect any differences at this point in time. And it could be that there are actually, after talking to a couple of our tone color synesthetes, both of them have stronger associations, color associations with pieces, keys, and modes, and not so much individual pitches. So it's possible that if we found people with stronger associations for individual pitches, we would have different findings. So in conclusion, there definitely seems to be a relationship between absolute pitch and tone color synesthesia, and there's tentative support for the hyperconnectivity link. And behavioral perception and memory in tone color synesthetes does not seem to be significantly different for now. So with that, I'd just like to quickly acknowledge Dr. Pete Jones from the University of College London for helping me program MATLAB for the perception task, and my friend Diana Miller from the University of Rochester for helping me troll the internet with my online survey. So thank you very much for your time and attention. I'll take any questions.
Questions? Yeah. In the epidemiological study, you said that the number of tone color synesthetes that have AP, that connection was higher than 0.35%. But what did you find in that group that didn't have AP, the 400 some odd in that study? How many of those were tone color synesthetes? So was it closer to the 0.35%?
We had, I just looked at this number, approximately 15 or 17 tone color synesthetes only.
400 some odd.
Yes, so there was still a very high incidence of tone color synesthesia. I haven't actually taken a look at that data yet, but if you'd be interested in doing that.
I just wanted to know, because
Yeah.
it was still higher, though, than the non-AP.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Thank you.
So I heard a description once of someone describing their absolute pitch as the way one would see color. We see a frequency of color, we know that's red. We don't need to compare it with anything to know that's red. So I'm wondering how someone who has this tone to color synesthesia, maybe it's like every time they hear that tone, they're seeing colors, they know that's an A.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that is related in that way?
Possibly, yes. The thing is, I spoke to one of the synesthetes who has both absolute pitch and tone color synesthesia, and she said that she realized her AP before her tone color synesthesia was pointed out to her. So I think at that point the associations were really strongly forged in her brain already. So one of the reasons that we thought that their behavioral data would be different was because they had this extra color perception ability. So it would be more discrete, if that makes sense. Like they would be able to spot the differences a lot better because they have their color subtleties. But so far our results don't show that this extra color description gives them a disadvantage. So does that answer your question? Okay, thank you.
Was there one in the back? then you're next. I'll get you next.
I'm wondering if you could give more information about how you recruited or advertised your online questionnaire.
For our online questionnaire? Okay.
It would be relevant, I think, for the conclusions we draw from the science videos.
Where's that list? I did not put the list online, okay, on my slides, but really quickly. So recruitment, so specifically social media refers Facebook, Twitter, so retweeting, hashtagging, all of that. Blogs, I put an entry up on my blog, Vicky put an entry up on her blog. Databases and mailing lists, we went on synesthesia databases, we went on the auditory perception mailing list, and any other mailing list I could find. I emailed my university's music department to try to get people to take it. And Reddit is a website with a lot of subfora for very many different interests. So what we did is we went across about 50 forums spanning neuroscience interest, psychology interest, music interest, or just general science interest, and we posted it, and I did a quick count, and assuming there was no overlap, about 20,000 people saw this based on the interest group, and we tried to keep it as diverse as possible. So.
My question actually, you referred now to what information did you provide in your advertisement text, you know?
Oh,
So
okay.
did you,
No, it was, the text is pretty much, we're running a study investigating unique conditions of the brain. Please provide us this information. We didn't give them the exact nature of the study.
Just another question.
Yeah, that was exactly my question, is how did you word it? So you made no mention to pitch or color or synesthesia in the actual advertisement, or?
Well, we did, but we didn't go into great detail.
Okay, I'm just wondering about selection bias though, right? Because we have 89 out of 500 people
Exactly.
respond who have absolute pitch, right? So that's, 100 times higher than most statistics that are cited in the literature, right? So I'm just wondering if you mention synesthesia or tone color associations, right? Are you going to get a significantly greater portion of absolute pitchers, pitch possessors who have tone color or synesthesia responding
For those of
just
you
by
that
the
are
way
actually
you worded it,
interested,
right?
here is the exact text that went out.
Okay.
So while you're looking at this, this, like all sessions, is a beginning of a conversation. So I know there are more questions. I hope you'll take time to ask amongst yourselves and our presenter as well. I hope to see you at the banquet, where the buses will leave from Pool. Is it up here on Pool Street?